the woman in linen. The sun shimmered over the turquoise waters of the Amalfi Coast as a massive $200 million superyacht Zephyrus bobbed gently with the rhythm of the sea. On board, champagne glasses clinked, designer heels tapped polished decks, and laughter from the rich and restless echoed into the Mediterranean breeze. This was no ordinary cruise. It was a private, invitation-only gathering of the world's most elite. CEOs, fashion moguls, celebrities, and royal heirs mingled under sunshades, each trying to outshine the other in status and glamour. Amidst this extravagance, a woman stood quietly at the yacht's edge, her back to the crowd. She wore a simple white linen dress that fluttered in the wind, with flat sandals on her feet and her dark hair tied back into a low bun. She neither sparkled with jewels nor announced her presence with designer logos. To most, she looked like someone's assistant, or perhaps a guest-shy friend who'd accidentally found her way onto the wrong yacht. Her name was Elena Hartley. The moment she boarded, whispers had started. Did someone bring their housekeeper? Who invited her? She must be lost. None of the glitzy guests recognized her, which was a feat in itself, considering most of them knew every billionaire on the Forbes list by face. But Elena was not your usual billionaire. In fact, she didn't even like the word. As Elena leaned on the railing, watching a school of fish dart beneath the waves, 3 women in sky-high Louboutins approached her. The leader, a tall platinum blonde with a Hermes scarf tied around her neck, like a badge of wealth, spoke first. "You know this is a private yacht, right?" she asked, her voice dipped in syrupy sarcasm. Elena turned and smiled politely. "Yes, I'm aware." The second woman scoffed. "Oh, she speaks. Cute. Are you here working the bar or the towels?" "I'm a guest," Elena replied evenly. All 3 women burst into laughter. "Sure you are," the blonde mocked, looking her up and down. "Which hedge fund pays you to lie that well?" Elena didn't respond. She never needed to. She turned away and walked toward the deck stairs. The laughter behind her followed like a trail of perfume. Downstairs in the yacht's main lounge, the men weren't much different, dressed in custom-tailored suits and sipping rare scotch. They spoke of their next startups, their new acquisitions, and how they'd turned nothing into billions. To them, Elena was invisible, until she passed by one of the screens near the helm, where her reflection caught someone's eye. "Wait," said Victor Lemaire, a French tech billionaire known for his streaming empire. He squinted. "That woman, where have I seen her before?" "No clue," muttered his companion. "Maybe some influencer trying to sneak in." Victor tilted his head. He had an uncanny memory for faces. But the yacht's captain walked past and distracted him with a greeting. "Gentlemen," he said, "just wanted to inform you that the rest of the fleet will be joining us by sunset. Lady Hartley insisted we anchor closer to the other 4 yachts." There was a pause. A heavy, awkward pause. Victor's glass froze halfway to his lips. "Wait, what did you say?" The captain blinked. "The other 4 yachts, sir, from the Hartley Marine Fleet. This is just a flagship. Lady Elena Hartley requested the alignment for tonight's display." Every head turned. Victor slowly set down his drink. "Lady Elena Hartley?" The captain nodded. "Yes, sir." Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped. The murmurs began. Phones came out. Fingers tapped rapidly. Someone pulled up a Forbes article. Another checked an investment briefing. And just like that, the room tilted, socially, emotionally, power-wise. One by one, they learned Elena Hartley, age 35, was the sole inheritor of Hartley Maritime Holdings, one of the largest private marine conglomerates in the world. She owned not just one yacht, but a fleet of 12. She controlled over 40 shipping ports globally. Her quiet empire powered almost 12% of all sea-based luxury logistics. And she'd built half of it herself, after her father's passing 5 years earlier. Upstairs, the 3 mocking women were now Googling her name frantically. Their faces paled. "Is this real?" whispered one. The blonde looked up from her phone. "Oh my God, she's worth more than all of us combined." One of them tried to save face. Maybe she didn't hear us. But Elena had heard, and more importantly, she remembered, back in her private cabin. Elegant but not flashy. Elena received a quiet knock. It was Marcus, her longtime assistant, and the only person on board who knew the entire truth from the start. "They're starting to figure it out," he said with a smirk. Elena took a sip of herbal tea. "Let them." Marcus chuckled. "You want me to rearrange tonight's dinner seating chart?" "No," she said softly. "Leave it. Let's see how they squirm." By sunset, 5 yachts floated side by side on the water, each one more magnificent than the last, all lit in a synchronized pattern like a floating city of power and grace. And at the center of it all, on the Zephyrus, Elena emerged onto the upper deck in the same simple linen dress. Except this time, silence fell. Every eye was on her. The 3 women who had mocked her earlier now stood awkwardly at the back of the group, uncertain whether to approach or disappear altogether. Victor stepped forward, his voice warm but hesitant. "Miss Hartley, or Lady Hartley, I presume?" Elena gave him a polite nod. "Elena is fine." Victor smiled, slightly embarrassed. "You created something extraordinary." "I had help," she said simply. "But thank you." He gestured toward the fleet. "I think you redefined what presence means." Elena looked out across the sea. "I never needed to redefine it. Just remind a few people." Down below, fireworks exploded over the ocean. Cameras flashed, and the ones who had laughed at her earlier now fought to get close to her, to shake her hand, to ask her opinions, to be seen in her presence. But Elena had already turned away, walking quietly toward the helm, where the captain waited for her cue to begin the ceremonial sail. As she passed Marcus, she whispered, "Ready the names for tomorrow." He smiled. "Of the people to remove from future guest lists?" "Exactly." And with that, the woman in the linen dress, the one they had dismissed, sailed forward, not just across the ocean, but through the shallow waves of society, leaving behind the weight of their judgment, and proving that true power doesn't need to shout. It merely arrives, quietly, confidently, and unforgettable. The woman behind the fleet. The morning after fireworks had faded over the Mediterranean, whispers of Elena Hartley's quiet dominance were already circling the globe. Tabloids spun headlines like, "Mystery Woman Turns Out to Own the Sea," and finance blogs published detailed exposés about the Hartley Marine Empire. But on the deck of the Zephyrus, everything was calm. Elena sat alone with a cappuccino in hand, watching the sea as the horizon brightened with the rising sun. She wasn't thinking about revenge. She was thinking about her parents, about the first time her father took her to a shipyard when she was only 9. He had said, "You don't need to be the loudest in the room. Elena, you need to own the room." Back then, she didn't fully understand. Now, she was the room. She knew what was coming. The fake apologies, the forced compliments, the opportunists suddenly calling her inspiring. The same people who mocked her clothes would now offer her business partnerships and private jets. But what they didn't know was she wasn't interested in being accepted. She was here to reclaim. Later that day, the main ballroom was reset for a formal brunch, this time with assigned seating. Elena's table, Table 1, had a small handwritten card with her name. Around her sat a select few, not the loudest or the richest, but the kindest. The captain, a humble marine biologist, guest, an older widow who had also been treated coldly by the others. These were the people she chose. The rest? They were scattered across the other decks, some seated beside the engine room. The same trio of women who had mocked Elena on day 1 were now trying desperately to get close to her. One of them even approached Marcus with a fake smile and a stammering excuse. "We didn't know. We were just joking." "She's so graceful, honestly." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "So graceful that you laughed at her back?" The woman flushed. Can we apologize in person?" He didn't blink. "Lady Hartley doesn't accept performative regret. Have a nice brunch." Inside, Elena watched the exchange from a nearby security camera feed. She didn't smile. She didn't smirk. She simply shook her head. "She's been trying to crash 4 of my charity galas this year," Elena murmured to Marcus. No need to entertain her now. And that was the difference between Elena and them. They performed power. She wielded it. As brunch unfolded, Elena stood and addressed the guests. Many of you didn't know me when this voyage began, she said softly, her voice clear. Some still don't. That's okay. I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came here to remember who I am. There was silence. Years ago, I stood at one of my father's dry docks with grease on my hands and steel in my heart. I built ships, negotiated contracts, and kept my name out of the headlines. Not because I feared judgment, but because I believed in quiet strength. Her eyes swept the crowd, landing briefly on the ones who had dismissed her. Yesterday reminded me that silence often reveals the loudest truths. Not all wealth shines. Not all power shouts. And not all hearts are kind. There was a pause. Then applause. Not the kind forced by obligation, but slow, rising genuine. After brunch, guests disembarked as the Zephyrus docked near Portofino. But Elena had one more surprise planned. Before the guests could leave, a final announcement was made. Lady Elena Hartley is donating the revenue of her fleet's Mediterranean voyages this season, over $40 million, to a global initiative for women in maritime industries. Gasps. Some guests clapped. Others just stared in awe. She had taken their judgment and turned it into legacy. Victor Lemaire approached her on the dock. You didn't just win, Elena. You elevated the game. She looked at him and smiled faintly. I wasn't playing. Then she turned away, not rudely but firmly. She had ships to run, empires to build, and a world to remind that you never know who owns the sea beneath your feet. That evening, as the sun dipped below the ocean, Elena boarded a small boat that would take her to a private island she'd recently acquired. Not for leisure, but to begin building a marine innovation center for underserved communities. Marcus sat beside her, scrolling through headlines on his tablet. The billionaire in linen, he read aloud with a smirk. That's what they're calling you now. Elena laughed. Let them. Linen is comfortable, and I don't need a crown to command a kingdom. As the boat sped across the waves behind them, the Zephyrus shimmered in the dusk, surrounded by the silent reverence of the sea. The same sea they had once thought she didn't belong in. Now she owned it, and she always had.